Captain Elena had seconds to decide, and every second felt like it carried the weight of the hundreds of souls seated behind her. The cockpit smelled faintly of overheated electronics, a sharp contrast to the calm routine that had filled the flight only minutes earlier. Her co-pilot lay slumped to the side, headset crooked, his breathing shallow but present. Training told her to assess, to call for assistance, to follow protocol. But instinct screamed louder. The aircraft shuddered as a warning tone pierced the air, and Elena realized that hesitation would be the most dangerous choice of all in this moment. She reached a Crow SS and secured the cockpit door with deliberate finality, shutting out the rising panic from the cabin. Through the reinforced barrier came muffled shouts, the cries of frightened passengers who sensed something. She was terribly wrong. For a fleeting instant, guilt flickered through her chest. These people were trusting strangers, and now she was sealing herself away from them. But he knew chaos could spread like fire, and one forced entry into the cockpit could doom them all. Her responsibility was not to comfort them. It was to fly the plane, to keep it alive in the sky long enough to bring everyone home safely. A cascade of alarms demanded her attention. Blinking lights, painting the cockpit in urgent red and amber. Altitude was dropping faster than it should, the aircraft struggling as though caught in an invisible current, pulling it downward. Eleanor's hands moved with practiced precision, adjusting thrust, stabilizing pitch, coaxing the machine back into balance. Beneath her palms, the controls vibrated with raw power, a reminder that this massive aircraft was both marvel and beast. She forced her breathing to slow, counting each inhale, grounding herself in the familiar rhythm that had carried her through countless hours of flight training. Her mind flickered through procedures, checklists, emergency scenarios drilled into memory during long simulator sessions. She heard her instructor's voice as clearly as if he were seated behind her. Aviate, navigate, communicate, fly the aircraft first. Nothing else mattered if the plane could not stay airborne. She pushed aside the fear that threatened to cloud her thoughts and focus, set only on what she could control: speed, altitude, direction. Outside the windshield, the sky stretched endlessly blue, indifferent to the crisis unfolding within the metal shells slicing through it. Behind her, a sudden thud rattled the door as someone from the cabin tried to force it open. The impact echoed through the cockpit, but Elena did not turn around. She could not afford distraction, not when every adjustment meant the difference between descent and stability. Instead, she activated the intercom with a steady hand, her voice calm despite the storm in her chest. She told them to remain seated, that the situation was under control, that she needed their cooperation. Whether they believed her or not, she hoped the firmness in her tone would buy precious minutes. Fuel calculations flashed across the display, a silent countdown she could not ignore. Diverting to the nearest airport would require precision and speed, leaving no room for error. She plotted the new course, fingers dancing across controls with controlled urgency. The aircraft responded slowly at first, as if reluctant to obey. Then began the gradual turn that would point them towards safety. Elena allowed herself a single heartbeat of relief before refocusing. There was still the descent to manage, still the challenge of landing without her co-pilot's assistance, still the unknown variables waiting ahead. Her memory surfaced unexpectedly, her first solo flight years ago, the moment she realized that fear could coexist with determination. Back then, the sky had seemed impossibly vast, the responsibility overwhelming. Now that same sky felt like an ally, offering space to think, to act, to survive. She tightened her grip on the controls, drawing strength from the path that had led her here. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night of training, every doubt she had overcome had prepared her for this exact moment, though she had never imagined it would come like this. The aircraft bucked once more, turbulence rattling the frame like distant thunder. Elena compensated instinctively, guiding the nose level, refusing to let the plane dictate the outcome. Sweat traced a line down her temple, but her expression remained composed, eyes scanning instruments with unwavering focus. She was aware of her heartbeat, loud and insistent, yet her hands did not tremble. In that fragile balance between fear and control, she found clarity. She was not just reacting anymore, she was commanding, shaping the path forward with every precise movement. As the coastline of the diversion airport appeared faintly, on the horizon, Elena felt the first true spark of hope. It was still miles away, still uncertain, but it was something tangible, a destination instead of endless sky. She adjusted their approach path, calculating wind, speed and descent angle, preparing for the most critical phase yet to come. Behind the sealed door were families, strangers, stories that would continue only if she succeeded. She whispered a promise under her breath, not to fate, not to luck, but to herself, that she would see this through. In that suspended moment between crisis and resolute, Captain Elena understood the quiet truth of her profession. Pilots were not fearless. They were simply trained to act despite fear, to carry responsibility without letting crush them. The cockpit, once a place of routine and calm, had become a crucible testing everything she was. Yet as she guided the wounded aircraft toward its chance of survival, she felt an unshakable certainty settle within her. She was exactly where she needed to be, the only one who could do what had to be done, and she would not fail. Fighting fear and fading fuel, Elena guided the damaged plane toward the nearest runway. Her eyes locked on the thin strip of asphalt that shimmered in the distance, like a promise she could not afford to lose. Every calculation had to be exact now. There would be no second attempt, no circling back if something went wrong. The engines responded unevenly, a reminder of how fragile their situation remained. She adjusted the descent with delicate precision, balancing speed against gravity, forcing herself to trust the training etched into her muscles. The ground rose steadily to meet them, turning the vast sky into a narrowing corridor of urgency. Inside the cabin, the earlier chaos had dissolved into a heavy, breathless silence. Passengers clutched armrests and one another, bracing for an outcome none of them could predict. A child's quiet sob broke the stillness before being hushed by a trembling parent. Flight attendants, pale but composed, repeated instructions in soft, steady voices, their professionalism masking the fear in their eyes. Everyone understood that they were suspended between danger and salvation, dependent on a single unseen figure beyond the locked cockpit door. Time seemed to stretch painfully, each passing second echoing with the question of whether they would survive. Elena lowered the landing gear, the mechanical rumble vibrating through the aircraft like a final declaration of intent. Warning lights flickered, but she pushed them from her mind, focusing only on the alignment of the runway ahead. Crosswinds tugged at the wings, trying to pull the plane off course, yet she countered every movement with firm, controlled adjustments. Her hands felt both heavy and impossibly precise, guided by instinct sharpened through years of experience. She spoke quietly to the aircraft as if it could hear her, urging it forward, promising it that they would reach the ground. Together. As the wheels met the runway, the impact tore through the cabin with a violent jolt that snapped heads forward and sent loose items crashing to the floor. The sound of rubber screaming against asphalt and lead the air, followed by a deep shudder as the aircraft fought to slow its enormous momentum. Elena held the controls steady, resisting the urge to overcorrect, letting the braking systems do their work. For a terrifying moment, it felt as if the plane might veer or collapse, but gradually the speed bled away, the roar diminishing into a strained rumble that finally rolled to a complete stop. An almost sacred stillness settled over everything. No one moved at first, as though afraid that even the slightest motion might undo their survival. Then a collective realization spread through the cabin. Visible in signaled they were still intact. When the aircraft, trembling smiles and tear-filled eyes, some passengers began to clap weakly, the sound growing as others joined, until the cabin filled with a fragile, emotional applause me. And for the unseen captain who had carried them through the impossible. It was not celebration so much as gratitude made audible, a release of fear that had been locked inside them. Elena remained, motionless in the cockpit for a few seconds longer, her hands still resting on the controls, as though she needed proof that the nightmare was truly over. The silence there felt different, heavier, filled with the echoes of alarms that had finally ceased. She became aware of her own breathing, it's uneven and raw, and of the exhaustion crashing over her now that adrenaline was fading. Carefully, she shut down the remaining systems, each switch a step back toward normalcy. Only when the final indicator did she allow her shoulders to sag, the tension draining from her body all at once. Outside, emergency vehicles converged on the aircraft, their flashing lights painting the windows in urgent streaks of red and blue. Sirens wailed across the runway, a sound that might have signaled disaster earlier, but now meant safety had arrived. Ground crews moved with rehearsed efficiency, preparing for evacuation, scanning for damage, ensuring no hidden danger remained. Through the windshield, Eleanor watched them approach, feeling a strange detac, imminent as if she were observing someone else's story. The magnitude of what had happened was only beginning to settle into her awareness, heavy and unreal at the time. When she finally unlocked the cockpit door and stepped back, it opened to a wave of emotion she had kept at bay. Passengers craned their necks to see her, their expressions a mixture of awe, relief, and disbelief. To them, she was no longer just a voice over the intercom or a distant authority behind reinforced metal. She was the person who had carried them through terror and delivered them back to the ground. Why? Yet Elena did not seek their attention. She simply nodded once, acknowledging them with quiet humility, her focus still on ensuring everyone would disembark safely. She didn't speak as she moved through the procedures that followed, guiding the crew with calm gestures and steady eyes. Words felt unnecessary, too small to contain the enormity of the moment. Instead, she listened to the sounds of people gathering their belongings, of seatbelts clicking open, of nervous laughter break-in, through lingering fear. These ordinary noises felt extraordinary now, proof that life was continuing when it could have ended. Each step she took away from the cockpit felt lighter, as though she were shedding the weight she had carried alone in those critical minutes. As the first passengers stepped onto the evacuation stairs and into the open air, Elena finally allowed herself to exhale fully, a long, trembling breath she had been holding since the crisis began. The cool wind on a runway brushed against her face, grounding her in reality. Sirens still echoed around her, but they no longer sounded urgent, only reassuring. She watched the line of survivors moving toward safety and felt a quiet, overwhelming relief settle deep within her. She had done what needed to be done, asked for no recognition, and expected none, content simply knowing they were alive.